So it's the time of year when hopeful students are sending in college applications, crunching their test scores and writing the entry essays, which is always hard. There's always pressure to get accepted into prestigious schools, but sometimes well-recognized universities aren't really for everybody because there's so many other good schools. Certified Education Consultant Teri Thompson is here to help break down the college hunt and application process. How are you?
I'm fine.
So we all want to go to Stanford.
Right.
But not everybody's going to get to go to Stanford.
Right.
And that's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, Stanford's a great example because I started doing this in 2008, and that was the year that Stanford had the first time that their admissions rate dropped below 10%.
Yikes.
And everybody said, wow, that is so low. It was the lowest of any college in the country. Well, now Stanford's admissions rate, the most recent one that they published, was around 4%. But they stopped publishing it because it's dropping even lower. So they said, we're not even going to tell people what it is anymore.
Isn't that something? But that means that 100 kids who think they're qualified, and probably many of them are, only 4 or 5, maybe 3, who knows, are going to actually get in. And your point is that we get so kind of goggle-eyed about schools with a big name that we don't really look for something that's more important, like a fit.
Exactly. And the other thing that people don't realize is that the undergraduate experience is about more than just the name of the school. It's about what you do when you're there, about working with the professors, about getting research opportunities. And many times students are able to have a second shot at going to Stanford because Stanford actually has more graduate students than undergraduate students, and so do many of the Ivy League schools.
And do some of those programs make maybe more difference in terms of where you end up? Like aiming for that graduate school might be a more important thing to do than trying to get there as an undergrad?
It sometimes can be, and you'd be surprised at how almost any school, actually literally any school, could get you to one of those top graduate programs. There were 185 different schools that students who got accepted to Harvard Law last year went to.
Interesting. So you would think, oh no, it's going to be the other Ivies that sent people there, but that is not the way it is.
All.
So these big books give me flashbacks, you know,
Yes.
just the what am I even looking for in there when your kid is trying to look, and of course for a teenager it's even more daunting to imagine all of this. So tell me about the role of a college counselor or a college consultant in doing this process.
So what I like to do is start by really getting to know the student. I have students do a career and personality survey. I have them go through an exercise to help them think about what is it they're looking for in a college. The academic piece is important, of course, but it is also the social piece that is really important. And when students transfer, oftentimes it's because it wasn't the right social fit, not the right academic fit. So I have kids think about, what do I want to do besides take a biology class or a criminology class or whatever it is that's interesting to them? You know, what clubs do they want to belong to? Do they want to be doing ultimate frisbee, or do they want to be rock climbing or in a garage band? And what schools can they do that in? Where are they going to find their people?
And whether it's a city or a rural setting, and how far away you are from the airport.
Right.
And a million
That's a
things
biggie for us from Seattle.
Yes,
is how do you get there?
Pay no attention to it until you're stuck in one of those things. So big name colleges, not everybody's first pick. Look for the fit, be open to some other things. What are the important steps or process that help us get to the right decision?
I think it's super important to go and visit some colleges. So a lot of times people think, well, what am I going to find out? I'm going to be walking around on the campus, and what am I going to learn? But ask the tour guide questions. Find out from the tour guide, how do you spend your weekends? Where do most of the other students come from? What other schools did you consider when you were thinking about college? And all of those things are going to really help the student to think about, could I see myself at this school?
Right, and does it feel right or not? And you just hope that you are able to go and make those visits. The college entrance scandals, I think, scared a lot of people. I mean, it was scary because it then makes you wonder, well, do I have a fair shot at getting into some of these schools if I'm just a regular applicant? How has that whole thing changed the way people are going about applying and the way people like you as a consultant help people understand the process?
Well, it was very interesting for me as a consultant because, of course, I knew that some people can buy their way into college, and they can, you know, if the family donates a building, the student has an extra shot at getting in, which makes perfect sense, and the colleges can always justify that. Right. But when I woke up the morning of the news about the college admissions scandal and found out that people were literally cheating, pretending to be athletes when they weren't, I was shocked. I just couldn't believe it.
Having other people take their standardized tests, that kind of stuff. So good. I'm glad that shocked you too, because that means maybe this was more of an aberration than you think. But it's scary when you're a family and you're going, well, I can't do any of those things. Do I have a fair shot with my kid? Is the answer
And the answer is yes, their kid does have a fair shot, because I don't think there was very much of that going on at all. It's so extreme, and you have to get a number of different people to agree to do it. It's not just a one-off.
How in the world did they think they were going to get away with that? Let's hope that that's all there was. Thank you so much for helping us.